6 p.m. on a Friday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's start with the headlines. After 12 hours of working level talks, South and North Korea agreed to hold high-level talks, a positive sign. The two sides can keep up the momentum and continue building mutual trust. The deadline has been set for the ratification of the KoreaChina FTA bill. While the ruling party is all for it, the main opposition expressed concerns over potential damages to the agricultural sectors. The original Black Friday in the United States begins, and this time more Korean shoppers are set to be a part of a large-scale sales event that raises astronomical numbers during the Thanksgiving holiday season. The two Koreas have agreed to hold their first high-level governmental talks in 8 years. The talks, set to be held in North Korea in mid-December, could mark a major breakthrough in inter-Korean relations. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
A deal struck after 11 hours of negotiations. On December 11th, in just 2 weeks' time, the two Koreas will hold vice-ministerial level talks at their joint industrial complex in Kaesong. Further details will be fine-tuned through working level contact at the border village of Panmunjeom, where the talks were held on Thursday. And all outstanding issues between the two Koreas will be discussed to improve inter-Korean relations. Seoul's Unification Ministry said setting the agenda was what took the longest time to arrange. South Korea's top priority is holding regular reunions for war-separated families, but Pyongyang, as widely expected, insisted Seoul resume tours to its Panmunjeom resort. Seoul halted tours to that area after a South Korean tourist was shot dead by a North Korean soldier in 2008. Although Pyongyang wanted to limit the scope of agendas, the two eventually agreed to the South call that a comprehensive package of deals be handled.
Seoul wanted the governmental talks to function as a channel to discuss a broad range of outstanding issues between the two Koreas. Pyongyang wanted to specify the agenda, but agreed to Seoul's proposal to make the next round of talks inclusive.
This means other agendas like North Korea's nuclear issues or easing Seoul's sanctions on Pyongyang could be dealt with at the upcoming inter-Korean talks. Thursday's working-level talks came just 3 months after an agreement was reached at high-level talks in August, although it took 2 months for Pyongyang to respond to Seoul's invitation. Reunions for war-separated families were also successfully held last month at the North Mount Kumgang Resort, which was also part of the deal reached then. As for the rank of officials to attend, the two sides quickly agreed to send vice-ministerial level officials. That was what halted the working-level talks in 2013. North Korea suggested the Mount Kumgang Resort, Kaesong Industrial Complex, or the border village of Panmunjeom as the venue for convenience of transfer, while South Korea offered to host the talks in Seoul. The South Korean government has vowed to keep up the momentum and continue building mutual trust to improve cross-border relations. The next round of talks following those on December 11th will take place either in Seoul or Pyongyang. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Over at South Korea's National Assembly, Korea's rival parties have agreed to work towards ratifying the Korea-China free trade deal next week. But as our Ji Myung-gil reports, a few obstacles still stand in the way.
The ruling Saenuri Party has set a deadline of next Monday or at the latest Tuesday or Wednesday for ratification of the Korea-China FTA bill. The ruling bloc called for the opposition's cooperation in order for Korea to benefit from tariff rate cuts from the end of this year.
It's imperative we ratify the Korea-China FTA bill on November 30th to benefit from tariff cuts. Economic revitalization bills must also be passed to run our economy smoothly.
Flow Leader 1 said if the trade pact takes effect within the year, the government estimates that Korean companies could save some $5 billion in tariffs. However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy said the parliament should further discuss support measures for agriculture and industries that could be adversely affected by the trade pact.
I think the Saenuri Party is turning a blind eye to potential damages to the agricultural sectors. There's no sincerity. Sometimes I really feel the urge to walk out of the room.
The MPD urged the government to devise effective measures to guard against a massive influx of cheap Chinese agricultural produce other than rice, and said that the government cannot focus on subsidizing rice farmers any longer. Meanwhile, President Park Geun has once again urged the parliament to ratify the accord by next Monday, or risk potential losses of $4 billion per day in exports. Seoul and Beijing signed the free trade deal in June, but it has yet to be ratified by the respective legislatures of the two countries. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
And after lawmakers from rival parties agreed to pass the free trade deal with China on Monday, the government once again is urging politicians for the swift passage of other bills. The finance minister also addressed solving thorny issues such as youth unemployment. For details, we turn to Hwang Ji-hye.
Korea's traditional growth engine exports have dropped every month this year, causing major headaches for economic policymakers. Last month saw the biggest drop in exports in more than 6 years, casting a dark cloud over the country's investments and production as well. To combat the trend, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-wan called on lawmakers at an economy-related ministers' meeting on Friday to swiftly pass pending free trade deals at the parliament.
In order to raise our export competitiveness and breathe new life into local exporters, the government is desperately anticipating the passage of 4 pending free trade pacts at the National Assembly, including the one with China.
Also up for discussion was boosting jobs overseas for the youth. The government aims to double the number of young Koreans working abroad from the annual 5,000 as of last year to 10,000 in 2017.
The government aims to diversify the types of overseas jobs to include technicians and jobs in prosperous industries, as currently most are from the service sector, which does not require high skill levels.
The government will adopt different training programs for young job seekers interested in working in one of the 15 designated countries identified as having ample job opportunities. The countries include the United States, Japan, and Singapore. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Once exclusively an American holiday shopping tradition, Black Friday has taken hold in many other countries, including Korea. The mega sales event kicked off at midnight in the U.S. or 2 p.m. Korea time. For details on the response of Korean shoppers and the government, we turn to Kim Min-ji.
The curtains have been raised. Black Friday, which refers to the Friday after Thanksgiving in America, is a huge shopping day with retailers across the U.S. offering large discounts, some as much as 90%. The shopping frenzy is a familiar sight in Korea as well. It's become a common household term thanks to Korea's own Black Friday sales event held last month, and eager consumers are turning online looking for big bargains. This shopper has been filling up her shopping cart for the last 2 weeks, browsing for the best deals.
I picked out the items in advance because I can just check for the best prices and make payments right away, which saves time.
The Korean government has expanded the list of tax-free eligible products under $200, and to lure Korean shoppers, some online shopping malls in the U.S. are offering direct delivery services to Korea as well as Korean language services. There are also companies and even mobile applications that complete the process for you from start to finish.
They take care of everything, from calculating taxes and delivery charges to giving advice on what to do when you need a refund.
Last year, Koreans spent nearly $700 million on goods purchased directly from the U.S. during the Black Friday sales, and that figure is expected to top $1 billion this year. However, it's also spelling trouble for local retailers, as it means they have to come up with better offers to stop consumers from jumping online and spending their money overseas. The Korean government is also mulling ways to turn the Korea Black Friday event into an annual one. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin pledged to support France's Grand Coalition against the Islamic State group. French leader François Hollande reiterated the view that Bashar Assad has no place in the future of Syria, but Putin said that should be up to the Syrian people to decide. Son Jung-in shares with us what they touched on during the frosty discussions.
The two powers signaled a new era of cooperation on Thursday following French President François Hollande's visit to Moscow. On the final leg of his diplomatic mission to forge a wider coalition against the Islamic State group, Hollande gained support from his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, who agreed on increasing intelligence sharing and intensifying their airstrikes against ISIS in Syria.
Today, we agreed to accelerate our joint work on the anti-terrorist track, to enhance the exchange of operational information in the fight against terrorism, and to organize constructive work between our military specialists.
The French leader was also assured that Russia would only strike Islamic State positions. In a joint conference, Hollande said the two agreed to strike the terrorists only and not the forces and groups that are fighting against the terrorists. Moscow has come under criticism for targeting some moderate rebel groups who are fighting ISIS and Bashar al-Assad's regime. But the two countries remain at odds over their approach toward Assad. Putin, calling the Syrian army a natural ally in the fight, said the fate of the Syrian president should be decided by the Syrian people and not by outsiders. However, Hollande maintained the position held by Western powers that Assad has no place in a post-war Syria. In line with Hollande's efforts to build a stronger anti-terror coalition, Germany has promised to help, offering reconnaissance aircraft, tanker planes, and a warship. Germany also pledged to offer satellite surveillance that could provide important information on the extremist group and help protect civilians in the region. 손정인, Arirang News.
China is in talks with the Djibouti government to build its first overseas naval outpost in East Africa. The move is in line with plans to expand China's presence in the international arena and protect its growing economic and security interests. Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
The Chinese government says that it plans to build logistic facilities to support Chinese peacekeeping and anti-piracy missions. Djibouti is already home to a U.S. military base that conducts counterterrorism operations in the Horn of Africa, as well as anti-piracy missions in the Gulf of Aden. But China's Foreign and Defense Ministry said on Thursday that its government conducted negotiations with Djibouti on building a support facility for Chinese naval ships operating in the region. Defense Ministry spokesman Wu Quen says the facilities will be built to facilitate the Chinese military's international peacekeeping efforts, naval escorts in the Gulf of Aden and Somalia waters, as well as aiding in humanitarian needs. Wu added that Beijing has contributed to anti-piracy operations since 2008 off the coast of Somalia, but has struggled to transport fuel and supplies. U.S. defense officials say that they were aware of the negotiations between China and Djibouti since last May. The Chinese government has been under pressure to protect its citizens overseas, as 4 Chinese were killed by militants in Syria and Mali last week, and evacuation orders issued to Chinese residents in Libya in 2011, and once again in Yemen in March. There are currently U.S. and French bases in Djibouti, and its ports have been used by foreign navies, including Beijing, to support operations there. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
A study shows that if the gender ratio between women to men widens, it will create more competition for males and in turn increase crime rates. According to a report released by Wall Street Journal on Friday, a group of researchers in Columbia University suggested a causal link between gender ratio to crime after analyzing crime data on Chinese males aged 16 to 25. The results indicated that with every 1 percentage point increase in the male-to-female ratio between 1992 and 2004, violent crimes went up by 5 to 6%. It shows single men are more prone to committing crimes than married men, and scarcity of potential partners result in greater competition in the marriage market. The journal cited that Korea's male-to-female ratio of babies in the 1990s was highest in the world, at more than 116 males for every 100 females, partly due to medical advances in prenatal sex selection. Last year, however, Korea recovered to normal levels with 105 males for every 100 females. Korea's Ministry of Justice has announced that it will enhance sentencing guidelines for protesters found guilty of violent act. It is effective immediately. For the latest, we turn to our Shin Se-min.
No compromise with illegality. Korea's Justice Minister said that all protesters exercising violence and wearing masks during rallies will be punished under the enhanced guidelines. Speaking to reporters on Friday, Kim Hyun-woong said those leading or orchestrating illegal rallies or protests will be found guilty and subject to harsher punishment under the law.
Violence has been a serious challenge to law and order, and this practice must be eradicated before it's too late.
The minister said that all means will be used to enforce the new guidelines for demonstrations and rallies. Kim added that although an amendment aimed at banning the wearing of masks during rallies, which was submitted by the ruling Saenuri Party, has yet to be passed, the tougher disciplinary guidelines will be imposed, starting with those on probation. The announcement follows a recent anti-government protest that involved tens of thousands of Koreans rallying against President Park Geun's labor and education reforms, an event that turned violent. The president of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions was issued a warrant for organizing the rallies, and one of the protesters remains hospitalized and unconscious after being water cannoned by the police. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
That's all from us for now. Thank you for watching. We do have more updates coming your way at 10 p.m. Korea time. Do join us then.